Ringo Starr is the oldest Beatle, having been born July 7, 1940. Ringo, exactly what time was it when you were born?
6 o'clock in the morning.
Did your mother ever tell you what she said the first time she saw you?
Oh my.
Just a few months after Ringo was born, along came John Lennon on October 9, 1940. John, I understand you talked quite early. What was the first word you said?
Mother!
How would your mother describe you as a child?
Bad little kid.
Paul McCartney wasn't born until June 18, 1942, nearly 2 years after Ringo and John. When you were little, Paul, did you have any special playmates?
I need a entertaining man.
John remembered his first childhood words for us. Can you remember the first thing you said? The youngest Beatle was George Harrison, who was born February 25, 1943. George, since you were the youngest, did the other Beatles have a nickname for you?
Baby.
Did they call you that for very long?
All things must pass away.
John, you were in a group called the Quarrymen. How old were you at that time? That's pretty young to be in a group and out playing and practicing every night. You were in school. Didn't your mother want you home doing your schoolwork? Oh, I'm sorry. Were the Quarrymen making much money in those days?
No.
Well, how did you live then?
One day at a time.
Paul, you were introduced to John by a mutual friend, Ivan Vaughn. When you met John, did you think there was a chance that you might be taken into the group?
With a little love.
If you hadn't been allowed into the group, what do you think you would have become?
If my back right turn.
You played a song for John, Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock, I believe. He couldn't play it, so he was impressed. When had you learned the song?
The night before.
George, you came into the Quarrymen last. Before joining up, you were with a group known as the Rebels. What did you play for them?
This guitar.
I hear the Rebels played a couple of dates. Do you remember where they played? Paul, John, and George were all together now, and the name Quarrymen quickly disappeared. You became Johnny and the Moondogs, the Silver Beatles, and a few other long-forgotten names. When did you finally settle on the name Beatles?
In September.
Well, John and Paul, back in those days, Stu Sutcliffe played bass for the Beatles. You played guitar, isn't that right?
Yes, it is.
That means you had how many guitar players?
1, 2, 3.
Do you think that was enough guitarists?
Too many.
So it was John, Paul, George, and Stu, but no drummer. Couldn't you guys find a drummer? Do any of you remember the names of any of the drummers who sat in with you?
They told you.
Are you sure about that, George? How about it, Paul? Do you remember any more?
Martin Luther. Illinois.
Well, before you went to Hamburg, Germany the first time, you came up with Pete Best as your drummer. Who recommended him to you?
Uncle Albert.
Was Pete a very good drummer, John?
Well. Oh, well.
Well, did he get along with the rest of the group?
No reply.